Lerato Mabilisa. Also joining us in the studio are Nombumelelo Hadebe and Tobile Fagutse, who will be our sign language interpreters. Lerato, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm alright, how are you?
I'm good, Lerato. Without wasting any time, please tell the viewers about today's timetable.
Okay, no problem. Our timetable for today is as follows. We have science for the grade 7 learners the time's not relevant right now, but then we have science first, and followed by literature and English for the JC learners, followed by additional maths for JC learners, then biology, EGC, SE for the Form 5s, and lastly religious education, EGC, SE for the Form 5s.
Yes, thank you for that, Lerato. And just a reminder to our viewers, we are live on YouTube and on Facebook. Please subscribe on our YouTube page so that you get notifications for when we are live. Also, we have a WhatsApp number that you can use that pops up from time to time. You can ask questions there if you have any questions, and then we'll further them to the teacher that day. Lerato, can you take us with Prudence Masego? We'll be doing science today, right?
Okay, no problem. And viewers, sorry for the delay. There was a Prince conference, the ministers. You know what that means, right? Yeah, so we're 20 minutes behind, so please pardon us on that.
Yes, we do really apologize for that. So we'll be right back with Lerato, who'll be taking us through with Prudence for science, with the topic being matter. We'll be right back after this.
Stay safe from COVID-19. Join the fight against coronavirus by following the safety precautions. Wash your hands with clean running water and soap, or use alcohol-based hand sanitizers. Cover your coughs and sneezes. Stay home if you can. Avoid non-essential travel. Avoid social gatherings. Practice social distancing. Always keep safe distance and avoid close contact with people. Use your card when making payments. If it happens you handle cash, immediately disinfect your hands. Stay safe and use our digital platforms to manage your money, checking balances and paying bills.
Standard Bank, moving forward.
Lamuhla ngiyaqhubeka ngosata sigeze tandla ngemanti lahlobile nesipho noma ngiyiphi isipho lekhona ekhaya. Geza tandla takho, ngisho isitandla takho utigeza yonke indzawo. Wasule tandla bese uthatha lolo suka ngako uvale inkomo. Uhloba kwami impilo yami. Siyabonga.
Welcome back, viewer. Today we're going to be learning science with Miss Prudence Masego. She's going to be taking the grade 7s on their science lesson. And the topic today is matter. Interesting indeed, right? Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Lerato.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you, Lerato?
I'm alright. So please kindly give us an overview on today's lesson.
Okay, thank you, Lerato. So today we are going to be learning about matter. We are also going to be learning about chemical changes and physical changes.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. Without wasting any time, please take us through.
Okay, thank you, Lerato. So today, learners, as we have mentioned, that we are going to be learning about matter, physical changes, and chemical changes. At the end of today's lesson, learners, you are expected to be able to define matter, atoms, elements, and mixtures. We are also supposed to be able to describe. You are also should be able to describe the processes that happen when matter changes from one state to another. The next objective, learners, you are expected to be able to describe methods of separating mixtures. Lastly, you must be able to identify physical and chemical changes. Physical and chemical changes. Okay, learners, we are going to start with matter. Matter consists of atoms which form elements. Matter consists of atoms which form elements. Now the question would be, what is matter? What is matter? So matter is anything occupying space and has mass. Matter is anything occupying space and has mass. Okay, the definition of matter will be more clearer with this diagram that I have now, the diagram which I hope you learners at home can see now. Matter, as I have just said, is everything around us that has mass and volume. Everything around us that has mass and volume. So here, mass is the amount of material in a substance, whereas volume is the amount of space. It's the amount of space an object takes. So that is the definition of matter, dear learners. So now we are moving on to atoms. We are first going to describe what an atom is. An atom is the smallest particle of matter. It is a smallest particle of matter. Now, what are these atoms? What are these atoms? So atoms, dear learners, are building blocks. They are building blocks for all materials and substances around us. They are building blocks for all materials and building blocks around us. So, yes, I want you to be clear with this one. So, city atoms are building blocks for all materials and substances around us. Now, some of these substances, learners, are made up of only one kind of an atom. They are called elements. These are called elements. Those that are made of only one kind of an atom, we call them elements. An example of an element is oxygen. An example of an element is oxygen. And then there are other substances, dear learners, which are made of more than one kind of atom. Those that are made of more than one kind of an atom are called compounds. Example of compounds is water. An example of a compound is water. So now I have a diagram, or rather a demonstration, which is going to show what we mean when we say elements are made up of one kind of atom. So now we are going to look at oxygen. I hope you remember that as I was citing examples of elements, I mentioned oxygen being one example of an element. We said that they are an element is made of one kind of atoms. So now when you look at this demonstration, dear learners at home, I hope you do see that there is an oxygen atom here. which reacts with another oxygen atom. So when the oxygen atom reacts with another oxygen atom, we get oxygen. So here, oxygen and another oxygen atom, they are atoms of the same kind. The same thing applies to hydrogen here. So hydrogen is also another example of an element, because here one hydrogen atom reacts with another hydrogen atom to form a hydrogen element. So here that is what we mean when we say elements are made up of one kind of atom. So in the previous description of a compound, we said that compounds are made of two kinds of atoms. They are made of two kinds of atom. Yes, I hope you remember that I cited an example of water. We said that water is an example of a compound. What do we mean here when we say it is made of two kinds of atoms? So here we see that there is a hydrogen atom, another hydrogen atom, and these hydrogen atoms react with oxygen, the atom of oxygen. So when these react, they form a compound, and this compound in this case is water. So that is how the elements and compounds are different. With the elements, only one kind of atom react to form just one the elements, whereas with the compounds, the two different kinds of atoms react to form the compounds. So I hope you can turn your books, grade 7, on page 120, on page 127. We do see the word which says periodic table. So this is how a periodic table looks like. Okay, in your books, I know that they have not put the picture of the periodic table, but this is how the periodic table looks like. So in the periodic table, that is where the elements are grouped orderly. They are grouped orderly in the periodic table. So this is the example of the periodic table. So there are about 118 known elements. There are about 118 known elements, and these 118 elements are grouped in the periodic table. They are grouped orderly. But I'm not going to talk much, dear learners. I'm not going to talk much on the periodic table because you are still going to learn more about the periodic table in later grades. I was just showing you how the periodic table looks like. Okay, now as we have said that there are about 118 elements in a period which are grouped orderly in a periodic table. Now we are going to look at some properties of these elements. We are going to look at properties of these elements. So some elements are solid at room temperature. Some are solid at room temperature. So examples of these that are solid at room temperature, we have copper, we also have iron. So those are examples of elements which are solid at room temperature. And then we have those elements which are gases at room temperature. Example of such elements that are gases at room temperature are oxygen and hydrogen. These are just a few examples. And then we also have elements that are metals. Examples of elements which are metals, we have gold, we also have silver. Another property is that we have some elements that are non-metals. We have other elements that are non-metals. Examples of those that are non-metals is carbon and sulfur. So those are properties of elements. We are saying some elements are solid at room temperature. Some elements are gases at room temperature. There are some elements which are metals. There are some elements which are non-metals. Now we are going to look at physical properties of matter. We are going to look at physical properties of matter. When we look at these physical properties, we are going to look at it in terms of ability to flow. We'll also look at in terms of shape. In terms of shape. We're also going to look at these properties in terms of volume. So you will remember, dear learners, that at the grade 7 level, we look at the 3 states of matter. We only look at the 3 states of matter, which are liquids. We also have solids. We also have gases. So now, looking at the physical properties of matter, I'm going to have a video demonstration because we are going to start with the physical properties of liquids. So we are going to have a video demonstration on the properties of liquids. So with liquids, as you can see, dear learner, liquids have the ability to flow. As you can see the liquid playing on that video, learners, the liquid has the ability to flow. Also, liquids take the shape of the container. I hope you can see that those containers there playing on the video are of different shape. The other one is circular, the bottle is circular, whereas the other container is rectangular. So the liquid there takes the shape of the container. That means that liquids have no fixed shape. Their shape changes according to the shape of the container. So that is what we mean when we say liquids have no fixed shape. Okay, another property for liquids is that their volume is fixed. The volume does not change. So irrespective of the size of the container, but the volume will just remain the same. So those are physical properties of liquids. We are going to move on to physical properties of solids. So solids have a definite shape. Solids have a definite shape. They also have a definite volume. So it means that their shape does not change. It remains the same. Also, their volume remains the same. Moving on to gases. Gases have no definite shape. They also have no definite volume, meaning that the shape of the volume, the shape of the gases, the shape of the gases changes. Also, their volume changes. So those are the physical properties of matter. Now, as we have said that they are in our level in grade 7, we look at the 3 states of matter, which are solid, liquid, and gases. So now, these states of matter can change from one state to another. So now we are going to look at the processes whereby the state of matter changes from one state to another. Okay, so these are the changing states of matter. So now, when a solid is heated, it changes from being a solid to liquid. and that process is called melting. The process whereby solid change to liquid is known as melting. And then again, when the liquid is heated, learners, when the liquid is heated, it changes from being a liquid to gas. And the process whereby the liquid changes from being liquid to gas is evaporation. And then the gas can also change from being gas to liquid. When gases are cooled, they change from the state of being gas to being liquid, and that process is known as condensation. And then when a liquid changes from being liquid to solid, we say the process is freezing. And this process will happen when the liquid has been cooled enough. When the liquid has been cooled enough, it will change from being liquid to solid. So that is how these states of matter change from one to another. Solid to liquid, that is melting. Liquid to gas, that is evaporation. And then gas to liquid, that is condensation. Whereas when a liquid changes from being liquid to solid, we say that is freezing. So now, as I'm going to move on, dear learners, I'm going to pose a question which you can just answer maybe later. The question would be, what is the difference between an element and a compound? Considering the descriptions that we have made about an element and a compound. So learners at home, can you just write down the difference between an element and a compound? Okay, learners, can we now look at the picture which is showing a combination of different substances. I now want us to look at the picture which shows the combination of different substances. I hope you can see that this diagram, this picture here shows different substances that have been put together. You can see there are some green beans there. There are those that are white. Some are brown. Actually, there are different substances here which have been combined. So what do you think we can call this, whereby we see different substances being put together? So I think, learners, you can tell that is a mixture. It is a mixture. So what is a mixture? A mixture, dear learners, is a combination of two or more substances. It is a combination of two or more substances. As you have seen, that the picture that I showed you before this writing. Now I mentioned that there are different substances. You saw that there are different substances here, and we say that this is a mixture. So a mixture is a combination of two or more substances. Examples of mixtures could be maize seeds and bean seeds. When you put them together, they form a mixture. When you put together the maize seeds and the bean seeds, they form a mixture. Another example of a mixture will be sugar and water. When you combine these two, they give you a mixture. And then we can also have a mixture of iron filings and sand. That is another mixture. So now I want us to talk more about this type of a mixture whereby you combine sugar and water. This one is known as a solution. It is known as a solution. So now let us look at this diagram which demonstrate how a solution is formed. So when you combine salt, when you combine it with water, when you combine it with this water and then you stir, what is going to happen there is that the salt is going to dissolve in the water. And then when the salt has dissolved in the water, we come up with salt solution. So here, this is still a mixture. It's just that this mixture is known as a solution. You'd remember, dear learner, that we said a mixture is a combination of two or more substances. So here we have combined salt, we have combined it with water, so to get the salt solution. Yes, it is a solution, but the solution is a mixture. So that is an example of a solution. So here I hope you can see, dear learners, that we are saying solution is a mixture of a soluble substance and a liquid. It is a mixture of a soluble substance and a liquid. Now I want us to look at this word soluble. Soluble. I want us to look at soluble. When we say a solid is soluble, we mean that that solid can dissolve in a liquid. Therefore, we say it is soluble. Whereas if a solid cannot dissolve in a liquid, we say that solid is insoluble. So in this case, in the previous demonstration here, it means that we are saying salt can dissolve in a liquid, which makes salt to be soluble. And then the water in which the salt dissolves in is known as the solvent. Excuse me, dear Lena. So the solute is the solid that dissolves in a liquid, whereas the solvent is the liquid that does the dissolving. So in the demonstration, the previous demonstration, it is water, which is the solvent. So when you combine solute and a solvent, the result will be solution. Now I want you to note this, dear learner. Water is known as a universal solvent. Water is known as a universal solvent. Why? Because many different substances can dissolve in water. Therefore, water is known as a universal solvent. Okay, as we have talked about mixtures, now these mixtures can be separated. There are some methods that we can use to separate the mixtures. The first method that I want us to talk about is sorting by hand. Sorting by hand. So this method of separating mixtures can be used. It can be used to separate a mixture which is formed with substances that are large enough to be handled by the hands. For example, when we look at this picture, whereby it's a mixture of beans, a mixture of green beans, a mixture of brown beans, that mixture which you can see, dear learners, that mixture can be sorted using the hands, because I hope you can see that those substances there are large enough to be handled by the hand. So you can just put the green beans aside, you can put those that are yellow aside, those that are white aside. So this mixture can be separated by the hands. Okay, another method that we can use to separate mixtures it's decanting. As you can see the diagram there, for mixtures to be separated using decanting, the substances that have been combined there must form layers. I hope you can see in that demonstration that there is the layer above, here, it's the layer for this layer, it's the layer for oil, and then we also have this one shown by the blue color, which is the layer for water. So here the substances that are combined must form layers so that one layer can be poured off first and then the other one remains. So this method is known as decanting. So we can separate mixtures using decanting if that mixture forms layers. It could be a mixture of a liquid and another liquid, just like in the demonstration that we have just seen. It can also be a mixture of an insoluble solid and a liquid. For example, a mixture of sand and water. You can pour off the water first and then the sand will remain. Okay, so the next method of separating mixtures will be evaporation. So this method is used to separate mixtures which are solution. I hope you still remember that we said a solution is a mixture. So here the solution will be heated, and as the solution is heated, the liquid evaporates, leaving the solid in the evaporating dish. So this is a method of separating whereby you separate mixtures which are solution. Remember, I said that the liquid, when the solution is heated, the liquid will evaporate. As you can see here, the liquid is evaporating, and then the solid will remain in this evaporating dish. Okay, can I give you Lerato? You seem to be having something to say.
Yes, ma'am. Our lovely grade 7s have questions for you. But I think the one that stands out most is the one that has to do with the syllabus. So there's a concern that the students have on our social media page, and they say what you're teaching is not in their syllabus. Can you please explain to the students why this is the case?
Okay, thank you, Lerato. Okay, what we are teaching is in the grade 7 syllabus. Actually, what we are looking at today, these topics start as early as grade 5. So these topics are linking. For example, they learn about the state of matter in grade 5, but they are continued even in grade 6, continued even in grade 7. So it could be maybe because they have not yet touched some of the topics, especially in the grade 7 books. Otherwise, what is being taught here is exactly in their syllabus.
Okay, so what you're saying basically is that when you're in grade 7, you're supposed to study grade 5, grade 6, and then grade 7 information.
Absolutely, yes, Lerato. As a grade, actually, the topics are linking, because you find that something that you have learned in the previous grade will be continued at an upper stage in the next grade. So yes, it is very important that even if you are now in grade 7, you do revisit what you did in the previous grades. I hope you are answered.
And the students are also asking, what is the difference between an element and a compound?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Lerato. Thank you, learners at home. Okay, yes, we did explain the difference between an element and a compound, but I'm going to mention it again. So we say that an element is a substance that is made of one kind of an atom. So atoms of the same kind react to form what we call an element. An example of an element, dear Lena, it's oxygen. Another one is hydrogen. So those are elements. They are formed of one kind of an atom. Whereas the compound here, the compound is formed, is made up of two kinds of atoms. For example, we made an example of hydrogen and oxygen. We said the atoms of hydrogen react with those of oxygen to form water, which is a compound. So in a compound, there are two different atoms that react, whereas in an element it's just one kind of atom.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us today in studio, and thank you very much for teaching us about matter and everything. Dear viewer, I hope you still remember that we have a YouTube page where we're live from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. And hello, Eswatini, and thank you for watching, little bro. And thank you for watching, guys, and have a nice day with Nogwazi, and I'll be back for the third subject.
Kids, wash your hands so you can come in and have lunch.
Okay, Mom.
Tabo, apply some soap. You shouldn't just use water only.
But my hands aren't dirty, Nolwazi.
Just because your hands don't look dirty doesn't mean they're clean. We need to wash our hands regularly with soap and running water for at least 20 seconds, just like teacher taught us, so that all virus-causing germs and bacteria are washed away.
Tabo, listen to your sister, baby. It's important to always wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Like right now before we eat, after using the toilet, after touching animals, or after changing a nappy. We must also clean our surfaces and toilet seats with disinfectant.
Guys, it's time to wash our hands. Wash our hands. Wash our hands. Dirt and germs don't stain entrance. Germs bye-bye. First the water, then the soap. And you scrub all your palms. Scrub your fingers till they're clean. Rinse and dry.
Guys, I'm home.
Welcome back, honey.
This is your 1 p.m. news update brought to you by Victor Silombo. In the news today, we'll speak a little bit more about COVID-19, a disease that's infectious and causing problems all over the world. COVID-19 is an infectious disease caused by the coronavirus. The disease can spread from person to person through small droplets from the nose or mouth, which are spread when a person with COVID-19 coughs or exhales. These droplets land on objects and surfaces around the person, and other people then catch COVID-19 by touching these objects and surfaces, then touching their eyes, nose, or mouth. Here's a few simple precautions that you can follow to reduce your chances of being infected or spreading COVID-19. Regularly and thoroughly clean your hands with an alcohol-based hand rub or wash them with soap and water. Cover your mouth and nose with your flexed elbow or use a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Then dispose of that used tissue immediately in a dustbin. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Maintain a social distance of at least 1 meter between yourself and everyone else. Drink copious amounts of water to make sure your body is hydrated. And remember, if you develop a fever, a cough, or have difficulty breathing, call 977. Stay safe, stay home.
Kids, I hope you are listening carefully. It's very important that we take these precautions very seriously, so we all avoid catching or spreading COVID-19. So, we must stay home for our safety. Okay?
Yes, Dad.
Buhle bethu imvelo yethu. Buhle bethu tindzawo tethu. Indalo yashada nemasiko kuhle kwethu. Kuvakasha kwethula umthwalo emahlombe ethu. Hloma ngwane vuka uvakashe indlela uyikhombe etindzaweni tethu. Temvelo nembukiso ungcebeleke uthathe netitfombe. Lalela ke nangu sonkondlo waseswatini akutekela ayibeka indzaba ayihlela kuhle kwelijaha lishela ngiyakutshela diningi tindzawo longativakashela hloma ngwane vuka uvakashe la phana lapha kuvakasha kuyayelapha enhlitiyo kanye nemicondvo kuyawuphumuta kuqinisa buhlobo nebungane losebundenga ndenga with a trip to Mantenga Falls or a sip among friends of Sibebe Brew on Sibebe Mountain, or perhaps your cup of tea is backpacking and horse riding, sightseeing the seamless streams and springs that stream across the gorgeous valleys of the mountainous kingdoms of Eswatini. We have you covered. Hloma ngwane vuka uvakashe. Buhle bethu imvelo yethu. Buhle bethu ngabuthola nasebantwini bethu.
A very warm welcome back to you viewers. I am Nogwazi Dlamini and you are still tuned in to Home Study. And if you have just joined us, we are just starting the Form 3 lesson. We are doing English literature today with Miss Debenguni Ngumalo. Am I right?
You're right.
Debenguni, how are you doing today?
I'm well, and how are you?
I am good, thank you. So if I'm not mistaken, we're doing introduction to poetry today.
That's correct.
All right. What do you expect the learner to have learned by the end of this lesson?
I want the learner to know how to read and analyze a poem.
Okay.
Yes, that's
okay.
the basic.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, can you please speak a bit louder,
Right.
when you're doing your lesson?
Okay.
To the viewers, just to remind you that we are live on YouTube and on Facebook, and if you have any questions, you can send them through to our WhatsApp number. And just to say, Siyabonga, we see you. Busisiwe, we see you on YouTube. Pindile, we see you guys. Don't worry. Keep on watching. And thank you for watching. Debenguni, I'll give it over to you right now. You can start your lesson.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, learners. Today I'll be taking you through the introduction to poetry, the study of poetry. So our lesson objectives for the day. We will first start by defining the term poetry, and then we'll move on to describe the structure of a poem, both the inward structure and the outward structure of a poem. We will then move on to identify and define individual components of a poem. We will start by defining the term poetry. Poetry is a group of words that form lines, which in turn form stanzas that express people's thoughts, feelings, experiences on a certain subject matter. Now we will move on to the structure of a poem. A poem can be divided into two distinct features. The first feature is the outward structure of a poem, and then the second feature is the inward structure of a poem. The outward structure of a poem, this is the outward appearance of the poem before one begins to read it. It is important to familiarize yourself with the poem before you actually read it. Here are the basic features of one should expect to find when looking at the outward appearance of a poem. But before we move on to the features of the poem, I'd like to take you through a poem, just read a poem for you, a poem by Oswald Mjali. The title of the poem is Just a Passerby. I saw them clobber him with gears. I heard him scream with pain, like a victim of slaughter. I smelt fresh blood gush from his nostril and flow on the street. I walked into church and knelt on the pew. Lord, I love you. I also love my neighbor. Amen. I came out, my heart as light as an angel's kiss on the cheek of a saintly soul. Back home I strutted, past a crowd of onlookers. Then she came in, my woman neighbor. Have you heard? They've killed your brother. Oh no, I heard nothing. I have been to church. This is just I want you as learners to know how a poem sounds like. So I hope you appreciate that. Now we will move on to the outward appearance. We will look at the structure of this poem bit by bit. We will start with the title. The title of this poem is Just a Passerby. The title is very important. It functions as an eye catcher to the one that's the reader of the poem. The poet is expected to the title of the poem is very important because it helps one to identify a particular poem from another. It is also important because it can also give us an idea on what the poem is going to be about. We move on to the author. The author is Oswald Mtshali. It is important to have the author's name because the author is also, actually, before I talk about the importance of the author is also known as a poet. An author helps us to distinguish one poem from another. The author also helps us when reading the poem, in that we get to know the background in which the poem is set. We move on to the lines of the poem. What are they? So the lines of the poem, I saw them clobber him with gears. That is an example of a line. Lines vary in terms of length and the number of words used in that particular poem. And then we move on to the stanza. The stanza is the whole block of the different lines that have been written. So in this case, this is the stanza of the first stanza. Here we have 4 stanzas in this particular poem. A stanza is like a paragraph. When you read prose, we know that paragraphs play an important role in giving us an idea after another. So one paragraph must discuss one idea. So that is the case also with stanzas. A stanza must relate to us an idea that the poet wishes for us to get. So that is the outward appearance of the poem. The title, the author, the lines, and also the stanzas. So before you read it, just go over that, and then start reading the poem now. Now we will move on to the internal structure of a poem. The internal structure of a poem include the following. When we talk, before I say what the internal structure entails, I will define what internal structure means. Internal structure simply means what you will find as you read the poem, the things that you are going to find as you read the poem. So here are the examples of the internal structure. The first is the language used in the poem. There are several ways in which language is used in a poem. The first being the literal language in the poem. This is the surface meaning of a word, which means the meaning of the word as it is appears in the dictionary. We move on to figurative language. Figurative language means the underlying meaning of a word or the writer's intended meaning of that particular word. Another example of language, of figurative language, there are several. The first is comparisons. We have metaphors, similes, personification in that category of comparisons. Then we also have contrasts. These include irony and hyperbole, just to name a few. And then we have sound. A poem will always have a sound that one will get as they read. Sound includes onomatopoeia, alliteration, assonance. And then we also have imagery. Imagery, an example of imagery could be symbolism. For instance, the color red symbolizes love. It can symbolize life, and it can also symbolize danger. So it depends how the poet has used that particular symbol. Another example of language is tone. We know that words give us a certain tone. When you use words, they give us a certain tone and they create a certain atmosphere. We move on now to another example of the use of language. Remember that we are still talking about the inward structure of a poem. The language here is diction. That's another example of language that is used in a poem. This is the writer's choice of words. As you read the poem, you will come across words that have been chosen for their effect in a particular line. For example, the writer may use the word stagger, which is a manner of walking. Then it is the reader's duty to try and figure out why the poet has used this particular word instead of a simple word like walk. Another example of language, which is the last one, is punctuation. These are the marks used to link separate words in a sentence. These include a full stop, comma, question mark, and exclamation mark, to name but a few. Another example of the inward structure of a poem is the speaker. As you read the poem, there will be that voice, the voice behind the poem. That is what a speaker is. So the person we imagine saying something out loud, that is the speaker of the poem. The speaker and the poet are not necessarily the same. So the speaker is the poet's creation, just like how character is created by a writer in prose. Another example of the inward structure of a poem is the theme. These are the central ideas of the poem. It addresses the writer's thoughts, feelings, opinions about a subject matter. There are themes that have been dealt with in poems, numerous themes, and these include themes of love, of war, of nature, to name but a few. So I want you, that is what we mean when we talk of the outward structure of a poem. I will give this time to Nogwazi.
Tebengunu, do you mind if we just take a little bit of a break? Maybe you can have a little bit of water. We'll be right back, okay?
Okay.
Viewers, we'll be right back after this.
Ligama lami ngithoni Thabethe, Captain Mbabane Swallows. Coronavirus has stopped our career. Nobody knows for how long. Join me. Let's all wash our hands and beat coronavirus. My cleanliness is my life.
Welcome back, viewers, to Home Study. Before the break, we were doing introduction to poetry for the Form 3s. I think I'll let you carry on, Tebengunu, with your lesson.
Okay, thank you very much, Nogwazi. I have covered the general structure of a poem before and after reading a poem, the things that you need to know. So in our next lesson, what we will be doing is going through a poem, studying and analyzing the poem line by line, stanza by stanza, and we will use the information that I've given you today to analyze that poem. So in preparation for the next lesson, please read the poem A Sudden Storm by Pius Olege, and then we'll take over from there. Thank you very much.
That's A Sudden Storm by Pius Olege. I think the Form 3's got that now.
Yes.
Okay, Tebengunu, thank you very much. I have a couple of questions from the Form 3's. One question was, I think they didn't get it from the beginning. They'd like for you to please explain what poetry is again for them. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. A poem is a group of words that form lines, that in turn form stanzas, which express people's thoughts, opinions, and people's feelings about a certain subject matter.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. The second question is, I don't understand irony. So I'm thinking they'd like another explanation of irony as well.
Okay. When we talk of irony, we mean it's in the family of contrasts, where you say one thing and you mean another thing. That is irony.
Okay.
So it's most of the time it is situational. So that is how it works.
Okay.
You have to have a certain situation in order for it to be explained clearly.
Okay, and maybe the last question is, how do we explore the writer's language towards the poem?
Okay. I'm not sure. To explore is to search and discover. That is the meaning of the word explore.
Yes.
So if you had noted, the lesson itself was on teaching you the language used by by poets. So if you read the poem, look for the normal words, the dictionary meaning of words, look for the figurative language, look for diction, those choice words, and you note them, and also look for the punctuation, and that will help you when you actually analyze a poem.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tebenguni, and I hope the Form 3s got that, and they'll be able to do their homework, which is read the poem that you had said, A Sudden Storm by Pius Oleche. That should be interesting for them. Form 3s, do not go anywhere, because up next is my colleague Lerato Mabilisa with additional maths. She'll be with Mfundo Gama, and I'm thinking today they're doing probability. We'll be right back after this.
Bonana, buyeni nigeze tandla stokudla.
Okay, Mage. Thabo sebenzisa insipho. Angeke usebenzise amandopho.
Tandla tami tide umhlaba musinolwazi.
Kuthi tandla takho tide umhlaba kusho ukuthi akukangcola. Kumele tandla sitigeze njalo ngensipho nemanti lahamba kwesikhathi lesingaka 20 seconds njengoba wasifundisa teacher. Khona kutowesuka kungcola nemagciwane labangakugula.
Thabo, lalela sisi wakho phela Shilo. Kumqoka ukuthi tandla utigeze ngensipho kanye nemanti lahlobile esikhathi lesingaka 20 seconds. Mawutokudla, mawuqeda kusebenzisa umthoyi, mawuqeda kuthinza tilwane. Noma mawuqeda kushintsha linabukeni. Kumele futhi sihlande imithoyi netindzawo lesikude ngalokubulala emagciwane.
Sekusikhathi sekugeza tandla, geza tandla, geza tandla emagciwane akanachance, geza tandla manje. Thela emanti ufake insipho, yonke indzawo, bese uyakata ngemanti, bese uyatisula.
Sanibonani.
Sawubuyile baba.
Idzaba ndilethelwa nguVictor Slow. Lo mhla sidawuva kabanti ngesifo se-COVID-19. I-COVID-19 sifo lesibangwa ligciwane le-corona. Lesifo sendluliseka ngekuthi emathe laphuma emlonyeni walonaso nakakhohlela noma khuluma awele tintfweni leti kuleyo ndzawo. Bese loyo longanaso utsinza leto tintfo ngetandla aphinza atsinze emehlo, impumulo noma umlomo. Tindlela ke tekunciphisa amathuba ekuthi uthole lesifo se-COVID-19 noma ekusanzisa. Ungalandzela natinyathelo. Geza tandla ngensipho nemanti lahlobile noma usebenzise isanitizer. Tsimula noma ukhwehlelele ngekhatsi kwengcoza loyigobile noma usebenzise liphepha lekufinya. Lelo phepha ubese ulilahla emgqonyeni. Gwema kutsinza emehlo, impumulo nemlomo ngetandla longakatigezi. Gcina sikhala lesinganga 1 meter emkhatsini wakho nalabanye bantfu. Natsa njalo emanti lahlobile utawugcina umtimba wakho ungiloshukumako. Mawutiva ngathi awusiye lophilile, kumbe uyakhohlela, uyashisa noma uphefumula kalukhuni, shayela inombolo lethi 977. Khumbula, hlala uphephile, hlala ekhaya.
Ngiyethemba niyeva ukuthi basicwayisa bathini boshiba. Kumqoka kakhulu ukuthi silandzele tonke letinyathelo kude singatholi futhi singasanzisi lesifo se-COVID-19. Futhi kumele sihlale ekhaya kuze siphephe, niyeva kambe?
Yebo babe.
Welcome back, dear viewer, to the third lesson for today. We're going to be learning AdMaths for the JC learners with Mr. Mfundo Gamampogane, who's going to be teaching probability. Good afternoon and welcome to the show, sir.
Good afternoon, Lerato, and how are you?
I'm alright. So please kindly tell us about today's lesson and what you'd like the learner to have learned by the end of the lesson.
Okay, today's lesson is mainly on probability. We'll be looking at combined events. What I would like the learners to learn here, firstly, it is going to be at the end of the lesson. They should be able to to use a possibility space diagram for combined events to show combined outcomes and their probabilities. Secondly, the learners here, they should be able to use a tree diagram to show combined events, combined outcomes. And then further, we are going to look at how to use the two diagrams to find the probabilities.
Okay. From threes, I hope you have your notebook, pens, and pencils. Mr. Gama, without wasting any time, please take us through.
Okay, so dear learners at home, firstly, before we move further, let's try to give a definition of a probability. So probability here, I have defined it and say probability is the measure of the likelihood of the outcomes of an event that is occurring. So that is how we can simply define probability as being stated right here. Okay, in some other cases you may find that the other people, they define probability also as a chance of an outcome happening in an event. So that is how we can define probability. So learners at home, please understand that probability is mainly expressed as a what? As a fraction. So this fraction, it ranges from 0 to 1. So maybe I can highlight here and say, so in probability we have probability 0, and also we can have probability that is equals to 1. So 0 probability means that event or that outcome is impossible to occur. And then probability 1, it means that outcome is certain. So which means definitely that outcome, it is going to occur. So we do have then some other probabilities that are found between 0 and 1. Some other fractions between 0 and 1. I can make a simple example like maybe 1 over 3. So 1 over 3 can be a probability that can be found between 0 and 1. So here I have some other examples that we can try to use here to understand the probability. So before we look at how we find the probability, let us start by looking at this keyword that I have here, so which is an event. So what is an event? An event, this is what is happening. So for an example, tossing a 20-cent coin. If I toss a 20-cent coin, it means that one is our event that is occurring. So and in each and every event that is occurring, we do have outcomes of that event. So here I have some outcomes that I have shown. So where outcomes, we can say are the results that are being obtained. So if you are tossing a coin, you can get a head, or you can also get a tail. So those are the two possible outcomes when you are tossing a coin. So we are saying an event is to toss the 20-cent coin. Then outcomes, it should be a head, or it should be a what? It should be a tail. So then what is the chance? The chance of getting a head. So we can say there is only one chance of getting a head out of two possible chances which are shown here. That is the head and the tail. What is the probability then of a head? We can say is 1 over 2. The probability of a tail also we can say is 1 over 2. So remember, we have said probability should be expressed as a what? As a fraction. Although sometimes some other people, they can convert that fraction to a decimal. So quickly, let us try to have these examples here to see how we can find the proper probabilities of the following events. So here I have a formula to introduce that we can use to find a probability of an event. So our formula, it is a formula that states that to find the probability of an event, it should be number of outcomes for that event out of the total outcomes all together. So that is the formula we can substitute onto so that we can find the probability of an event. So let's have a first example here, which is what is the probability of choosing a black ball. So to choose a black ball, we can say how many black balls do we have? It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 black balls. So which means our probability, it is going to be 5 out of 5 out of 8. So that is the probability of choosing a black ball. So sometimes you may find that they ask you questions like this one here. So they are saying, what is the probability of not getting a black ball? So what is the probability of not getting a black ball? So to not get a black ball, it means from here you can see that if it is not black, it means that one is going to be red. So how many red balls do we have? So we can say there are 3 red balls. So which means the probability of red, it is going to be 3 out of 8. Or else we can find that probability by saying 1 minus the probability of a black. So which must give us the same answer. That is going to be the 3 over 8. So that is why we learners at home, we are supposed to understand in some other cases. So which means probability of an event not occurring is equals to what? It is equals to 1 minus the probability of an event occurring. So with this second example here, if the probability that it rains today is 1 over 3, so what is the probability that it does not rain? So we can see that the probability that it does not rain, it is going to be 1 minus the 1 over 3. So giving us an answer that is 2 over 3. So that is how we can find the probability of such events. So we for the next activity now, we are going to look quickly at some other events which are called combined events. So what are combined events? Combined events are easily described as 2 or more events occurring at the same time or in a sequence that is one after the other. Examples that I can show here, it can be an event of tossing a 10-cent coin. The outcomes of that 10-cent coin, it should be a head or it should be a tail. And then event number 2 that is occurring is tossing a 20-cent coin. So as you are tossing the 20-cent coin, so we can say the outcomes, it should be the head or it should be the what? It should be the tail. So therefore, to combine these the outcomes of the first event with the outcomes of the second event here, we can have what is called the combined outcomes. So what are our combined outcomes for these combined events? It should be a head combined with a head, that is a head combined with a head, or it should be a head combined with a tail, so that is a head combined with a tail. It also, we can have a head that is a tail being combined with a head, that is a tail combined with a head, or else it should be 2 heads, that is 2 tails, that is a tail. So these are the what? These are called combined outcomes, which should be obtained from combined events. So another second example that I have here for combined events, it is when you are throwing 2 dice at the same time. So as I throw 2 dice at the same time, we can say it is going to be a blue die that is being thrown, and then is a red die that is being thrown. So as I throw the 2 dice at the same time, I am supposed to have combined outcomes. So what should be the possible combined outcomes? We can indicate and say outcomes of the blue die are combined with the outcomes of the red die. So where we can say it is 6 for the blue die, it is combined with 5 from the red dye, or it is going to be 6 from the blue dye combined with 1 from the red dye, or it could be 6 and 3, it could be 4 and 5, it could be 4 and 3, it could be also 4 and 1, it could be also 5 and 5, or 5 and 3, or 5 and 1, or 5 and 3. But there are some other outcomes that we can have here. But since we can have a total of 36 combined outcomes, we can have a possibility space diagram, 2 diagrams that can be drawn to show the combined outcomes. So those diagrams of probabilities, the first one, which you are supposed to be able to draw and use, it is a possibility space diagram. And the next one, it is a tree diagram. So let us see how to use or how to draw a possibility space diagram. So I will use this example here. A red dye together with a blue dye are being drawn. So draw a possibility space diagram to show the combined outcomes here. So what is needed here, firstly, we are supposed to identify the first event. So our first event is an event of drawing a red dye. So outcomes of the red dye is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. So then second event, it is going to be drawing a blue dye. So the outcomes of the blue dye, it is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. So we can take these 2 events and combine them by drawing a diagram which is called a possibility space diagram. So how then can I draw the possibility space diagram? First event, it should be shown horizontally and then with its outcome. So with me, I have said red dye, and then outcomes of a red dye is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then secondly, it is vertically, we can show the occurrence of the blue dye. Outcomes of the blue dye, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. So then to combine the first event, which must be the red dye together with the blue dye, we can use crosses to combine. So our first cross that we can see here, it is that 1 and 1. That means 1 from the red dye and then 1 from the blue dye. So, and then you further find all the outcomes. In total, it should be 36 outcomes. So that is how we can draw a possibility space diagram. So we can highlight quickly the points here. So we've said identify the first event and its outcome, identify the second event and its outcome, represent the 2 events and outcomes using vertical and horizontal axis. And then after using the vertical and horizontal axis, we use crosses to combine the outcomes. So those are the points of drawing a possibility space diagram. So after drawing the possibility space diagram, then we should be able to use the possibility space diagram. So how to use the possibility space diagram? We can use a possibility space diagram. I have some examples here where we'll be showing how to use the possibility space diagram. So our question states that use the possibility space diagram to find the probability. Use the possibility space diagram to find the probability of getting equal scores. So equal scores, it means the outcome from the red dye should be equal to the outcome from the blue dye. So which must give us 1 equals to 1, 2 is equals to 2, 3 is equals to 3, 4 is equals to 4, 5 is equals to the 5, then 6 is equals to the 6. So which means we can say our possible combined outcomes, it is going to be 6 possible outcomes out of the total altogether, that is 36, simplified to 1 out of 6. So another example that we can have here is a sum of at least 10. The sum of at least 10. So at least 10, sum means what? Sum means total. And then at least 10 means 10 or more than 10. So in our combinations, it is going to be at least 10, that must be total of 10 or more than 10. So total 10, we can say 4 and then 6, we get total 10. It is 5 and 5, we get total 10. It can be 6 and 4, we can get total 10. 5 and 5, that is more than 10 because it is 11. And then 6 and 5, that is more than 10 because it is 11. That is 6 and 6, that one is a total 12, which means it is equals to more than 10. So therefore the probability of these outcomes I've indicated here, it is going to be 6 outcomes again out of the 36, simplified to the 1 out of 36. So that is how we can use a possibility space diagram, dear learners at home. So next now, let us try to do this activity. There's an activity which I am going to give you here, and try to draw a possibility space diagram where a 20-cent coin is tossed and a blue die is being thrown. So draw, that is our question, draw a possibility space diagram to show the combined outcome. So you can try to do that one at home. So our question is now 20 cent, it is being tossed and a blue die is being thrown. So draw a possibility space diagram to show the possible combined outcome. So you can try to do that one at home. Firstly, remember that you are supposed to identify the events which are occurring. So in this case, we can say 20 cent and a blue die. So then as you have that one, I guess your answer, it is going to be like this one. So it's a coin being tossed and then a blue die that is being thrown, so which means the outcomes of the coin this side and then outcomes of the blue die this side. So we can combine those outcomes and then say our answer here, it is going to be like this. Okay, so before we continue to using the possibility space diagram which we have drawn right here, let us have a question. It seems like Lerato has a question right here.
Well, sir, the viewer at home says that you're a bit fat. So in order for our gentlemen and our ladies to be able, so that they're able to catch up with you, please can you kindly slow down your tone?
Okay, thank you,
Renato. And another question is, please repeat the formula of probability.
Okay, we have said the formula for finding probability, it's a formula that states that it is going to be the number of actual outcomes occurring in that event out of the total possible outcomes altogether. So that is the formula we can use right there to find the probabilities. So you substitute onto it and then you find the answer after that.
Okay, dear viewer, ladies and gentlemen, can we please take a quick commercial break? And to the following, Siyabonga M Dlamini, Siyabonga ES, and Hlelelo Lelo. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. Please, can we take a quick commercial break and we'll be back. Welcome back, dear viewer, to Home Study. We're still with Mr. Mfundo Gama, who is teaching additional maths. And not only are we thankful to our viewers on YouTube, we're also thankful to you who is watching us on your screen. Thank you very much for participating in our lessons. Mr. Mfundo, please continue. But before he continues, please do not forget that you can post questions on our social media pages, YouTube and Facebook, and also on our WhatsApp line, which appears from time to time on the screen. Mr. Mfundo, please take your time and can you teach our learners? Take your time and calm down.
Okay.
Continue.
Thank you, Lerato. And viewers at home. So what we were discussing are the solutions of the activity that we have there. So firstly, it was drawing the possibility space diagram. So now it is to use it. So to use it, we have these following questions to answer here. The first one, use the diagram to find the probability of getting a head and an even number. So in our combinations, we are going to look for combinations where it is a head and even number. So that is in there in the possibility space diagram. Head and even number, we can say head and even number, it can be head and 2. Head and even number, it can be head and 4. Head and even number, it can be head and 6. So which means our combinations, there are 3 combinations out of the total altogether, that is a 12. So there are 12 combined outcomes in this possibility space diagram. So our answer simplified, the 3 over 4, it can be simplified to the 1 out of the 1 out of 12 of 4. So the next one is a tail and a prime number. So combinations of a tail and a prime number, so we can say is a tail from our diagram, tail and a prime number. So prime numbers that we have is a prime number 2, is a prime number that is 3, is a prime number that is going to be 5. So to combine tail and a prime number, we can say this is the first possible combination, this is going to be the second possible combination, and this one is going to be the third possible combination. So which means it is going to be 3 again out of the 12 possible combined outcomes, simplified to 1 out of 4. So I hope learners at home, you obtained also the same solutions right here. So after being able to draw the possibility space diagram, please understand that we do have another diagram to represent combined outcomes. That diagram, it's a diagram which is called a tree diagram. So I'll make you to understand how to draw a tree diagram to represent combined outcomes. In this case, our combined outcomes, they are saying we are supposed to toss a 10-cent coin and then toss a 20-cent coin. So draw a tree diagram to show all the possible combined outcomes. So I'll take you in stages, one after the other, to show how you draw a possibility space diagram. So to draw the possibility space diagram here, firstly, identify the first event. Our first event is an event of tossing a 10-cent coin. Outcomes, it is a head or a tail. So we can take these and represent as a tree by using branches. So which is going to be our first outcome, head. It can be shown in a diagram, which is going to be the head. This H, it stands for the head. And then our next possible outcome is a tail. So that tail, it means we can show that outcome tail by using a branch. So this is going to be for the first event, which is our first stage. We can show that one as our event. So secondly, now let us show the event of a 20 cent. So the event of a 20 cent, so we can say after the occurrence of the event of a 10 cent, we can have event number 2, which is going to be the event of a 20 cent. So event of 20 cent, its outcome, it is going to be head or it is going to be a tail also. So then, so the first event, we have shown that it is going to be like this. And then to combine the first event with this second event, we can show that the two outcomes of the 20 cent, they are going to be combined with each outcome of the 10 cents. So that is why we can say head, it can be combined with the head and the tail of the 20 cent can be combined with the head of the 10 cents. Secondly, we can also show that the two outcomes of the 20 cent, they can be combined with the previous outcome of the previous event, which must be the tail. And then along the branches, we can write the probabilities. That is 1/2 for the head, 1/2 for the tail, 1/2 for the head, 1/2 for the tail, 1/2 for the head, and 1/2 for the tail. So our combined outcomes, it is going to be 2 heads. That is, as you move along, it is going to be head, head, head. And also, if you move along here, it is going to be head, head, head. As you move along here, it is going to be tail, head, and then after that, it is going to be tail, tail. So then after that, we can say 1/2 times 1/2, we can get our answer, which is going to be 1/4. So along the branches, we multiply 1/2 times 1/2, we get 1/4. 1/2 times 1/2, we get 1/4. 1/2 times 1/2, we get 1/4. So that is how we can draw a tree diagram for these two events. So here, to show the steps that we talked about, to wrap up here, we can say we have to find the first event and then outcomes, second event and then outcomes, and then combine the outcomes of the first event with the outcomes of the second event using branches, and then identify the combined outcomes. So you find the final outcomes by using multiplication. So that is what we can say with drawing a tree diagram, Lerato.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. The formula for probability, they said, now please can you describe the tree diagram and how it works? Like, they didn't get how the tree diagram works because I think you're a bit too fast, so please can you recap?
Okay, so I have said the tree diagram, basically it is for showing combined events. So if there are two events that are occurring, so we can show those events by using a tree diagram. Okay, so I have my diagram here. So it is an event of a 10 cent that is occurring. So outcomes of a 10 cent, it is a head and then tail. So after that, we can write the probability. We have said previously, the probability of getting a head is 1/2. Getting a tail is also 1/2. So after the occurrence of the first event, we can have a second event, which must be now tossing a 20 cent coin. So outcomes of a 20 cent coin, which is the head and the tail, they should be combined with the previous outcomes of the 10 cent coin. So therefore, how do you combine? You are going to understand that we are going to show two sets of branches since our outcomes, there are two outcomes here. So how to combine them? We are going to say for each outcome of the previous, we are going to show the two outcomes of the next event. In this case, it is going to be the 20 cents. So the two outcomes of the 20 cents, it is the head and the tail. So therefore, we can combine and say head of the 10 cent, it is combined with the head of the 20 cent. So then you have a combined outcome there, which is going to be the head and the head. So after that, you find the probability of this HH, so which must be head and head, by multiplying the two probabilities. That is 1/2 and this other 1/2. So our answer there, it is going to be 1/4. So the formula which I gave you at first, it was a formula that would be used in those events. You remember that in Form 2 they talked about single events, but here we are not discussing single events, but we are discussing combined events to find the probabilities and to find the combined outcomes there.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kama. Up next is Nogwazi Dlamini, my colleague, who is going to be with Mr. Eugene who's going to be teaching you biology from 5s, and she's also going to be with the RE teacher. So thank you very much for watching from 3s and grade 7s. Up next is the from 5s. Thank you, Mr. Gama, for slowing down and explaining to the learners.
Yeah, most
Thank you
welcome.
very much.
Okay.
Okay, guys, please can we take a quick commercial break, and Nogwazi will be back. She'll be back.
The basic protective measures against the new coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently and thoroughly with soap and water, or use alcohol-based hand rub. Maintain social distancing. Maintain at least 1 meter distance between yourself and anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Avoid touching eyes, nose, and mouth. Hands touch many surfaces and can pick viruses. Once contaminated, hands can transfer the virus to your eyes, nose, or mouth. From there, the virus can enter your body and make you sick. Practice respiratory hygiene. Make sure you and the people around you follow good respiratory hygiene. This means covering your mouth and nose with your bent elbow or tissue when you cough or sneeze. Dispose the used tissue immediately. If you have fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, seek medical help early. Stay home if you feel unwell. Follow the directions of your local health authority. Stay informed and follow advice given by your healthcare provider.
Nkosi yabesizwe msidisi Nkosi yamdanyela emabhubesi niphilisa lezodwa lakho besiyekelela ukubuyela lokuhle. Nkosi yabesizwe landandula Vanebukadnezar danyela emabhubesi ni Stefana welelo ndlela bobusonzela wena utsina gogo Nkosi yami tilwimi noma ingilozi nekhambe ekhapheni ahume phambi satanda gogo sobe siyakhuleka. Nkosi yabesizwe Nkosi yami mandla wami mandla ami London fish wiki sokato mthele ngamanti mfana mthele ngamanti
hayi amanti ngivuse esimolise
ngilozi yabezizwe
ngishaya kana wiki so
ngilozi Nebukadnezar ematake makhulu kakhulu
hey
sana ngilozi Gabriel
hey wena ngithemba mprofeti siyamthemba simolise msakuthintsana nalomuntu lo kweshelele msakuthintsana nalomuntu ngithi mina nangiwala angiwiswa ukuthi unemandla lo mntana lo lemandi lokhuluma ngawe into lebekufanele ayisebenzise ekuqaleni ngiwiswa kumangala ukuthi ukhona umfulo ongaphatha lomunye etandla ngathi gesi
mina gogo ngilapha spiritual not physical lethi tandla ta Gabriel ngilozi lenkulu
lelela la wena mthana mina ngithinjwa ngumuntu ngimangaliswa ngilokho ngithenisa nje la emadolobheni ndonke ndzawo donke kuyashunyayelwa simolise ukuthi akugezwe tandla ungakathinzi lokudliwako qala ngekugeza tandla ubuye endlini yangasese emthoyi nawubuya ugeza tandla ugeza kuntshintsha umntwana geza tandla angifaka nangilotho sithinza yena thinza lo
sithelana ungageza tandla oh mina ngelapha
unani wena
ufuna kusigulisa gogo nami ngangeveretin gogo bathi ngana sifo nyalo bathi coronavirus gogo COVID-19 bathi gogo sihambiswa ukuthi abantu abageza tandla gogo because lesifo lesinothimula siphuma lamaphephelethi aso gogo ahlala atandeni soqhawula lo moya njanja manje bafuna ukugeza tandla namsekutheliba uthi ungasinzi ungageza tandla vile ke lokuthi every after 20 seconds you must wash your hands with running spitting water
hayi shothi uvele enye redo uwasha tandla for 20 seconds yebo ufake amanti ufela hambako ufake nensipho yebo geza bese uyadomisa kahle le tandla hayi simolisi lokala redo lendlulako emanti lakhe chimako nensipho likhambi lelo kukhona ke indvodethu uthine lesifundzile esimolisi naku kwagogo naku hako fertilizer kwagogo ngihle ngithi puchu ngithi wethu lokho fertilizer uyakubona hayi gogo sanitizer
COVID-19 is an infectious disease caused by a new coronavirus introduced to humans for the first time. It is spread from person to person, mainly through the droplets produced when an infected person speaks, coughs, or sneezes. These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of people who are nearby. These droplets are too heavy to travel far in the air. They only travel approximately 1 meter and quickly settle on surfaces. This is the reason person-to-person spread is happening mainly between close contacts. The exact time that the virus can survive on surfaces is not yet known. So it is wise to clean surfaces regularly, particularly in the vicinity of people infected with COVID-19. Hands touch many surfaces, which can be contaminated with the virus. You should therefore avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouth, since contaminated hands can transfer the virus from the surface to yourself. When coughing or sneezing, cover your mouth and nose with the bend of your elbow or use a disposable tissue. If a tissue is used, discard it immediately into a closed bin. The most effective way to prevent the spread of the new coronavirus is to clean your hands frequently with an alcohol-based hand rub or soap and water. This will eliminate the virus if it is on your hands. Stay healthy and prevent the spread of COVID-19.
To our viewers, I am Nogwasi Dlamini, and if you have just joined us, right now we are doing Form 5 Biology. As always, I am not alone in the studio. I am with Zanele Mota and Linda Mamba, who are going to be our sign language interpreters. And joining me as well is Mr. Eugene Dlamini, who is going to be teaching the Form 5 Biology class. Mr. Dlamini, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you, Nogwasi. How are you?
I'm good. Could you please tell us what today's topic is and what you expect the learner to have learned by the end of this lesson?
Okay, today is just a continuation of reproduction.
Okay.
And the last part that deals with birth controls and assisted conception treatments.
Okay.
And then lastly, sexually transmitted infections.
All right. Okay, Form 5s, I hope that you are ready. You have your notebooks and your pens ready. And just a reminder, we are live on YouTube. We are also live on Facebook. And if you have any questions, you can direct them to our WhatsApp number, which pops up from time to time. Ask questions, please. Do not call us, guys. We're not going to answer. All right. Mr. Dlamini, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Nogwasi. Greetings, viewer. Our lesson today is on reproduction. We'll just recap. We have here what we did in the last lesson under the topic reproduction. We looked at asexual and sexual reproduction, definitions and comparisons. Our viewer will also remember we looked at flowering plants, including the structure and function of flowers, pollination, fertilization, and formation and dispersal of fruits and seeds. Lastly, we looked at reproduction in humans, including the structures and functions of the reproductive organs, males and females. We looked at the menstrual cycle. We looked at pregnancy, birth, and breastfeeding, advantages and disadvantages. So the objectives for today's lesson, to discuss, number one, birth control and assisted conception treatments. We'll look at signs and symptoms, effects, treatment in the case of gonorrhea. Then we'll look also at methods of transmission of HIV and ways by which it can be prevented from spreading. We'll look at how HIV affects the immune system, and also discuss some advances in the control and treatment of HIV and AIDS. The rationale for this lesson: birth control helps us to prevent unwanted pregnancies and allows couples to have the number and the age spacing of children that they wish to have. Assisted conception treatments are for assisting couples that have difficulties with conceiving. And then lastly, knowing about sexually transmissible infections and HIV can help with preventing and also with treating them. We will start off the lesson by looking at some questions courtesy of the paper 2 in the Eswatini examination from 2019. On these topics, we have a question on hormonal implant. The main thing being asked here is describe how the hormonal implant will stop pregnancy. The learner can just answer that question and we'll look at the answers towards the end of our lesson. Another question we picked up from past papers, paper 2, 2018, we have a question on fertility drugs. Describe how fertility drugs are used to treat infertility. The last question, also from Eswatini, this time 2017, is a question on HIV and AIDS. Describe how HIV affects the immune system. Describe how HIV affects the immune system. So dear learner, we hope you will give answers for these questions and you will check your responses at the end of our lesson today. So we begin by looking at methods of birth control, and we have listed here 4 categories of the birth control methods. Natural methods, and under natural methods are abstinence, rhythm, and withdrawal. We will look at those 3. Then we have the chemical methods, and under chemical methods we'll look at spermicides, contraceptive pills, injectables, and hormonal implants. Mechanical methods. Under mechanical methods we'll look at intrauterine device, male condom, and the female condom, otherwise known as the femidom. Lastly, surgical methods, we'll look at vasectomy in men, tubal ligation in females. So, natural methods. What is abstinence? Well, abstinence is simply not having sexual intercourse. No sexual intercourse means no sperms, no fertilization, no baby. Second natural method is rhythm, and rhythm uses your knowledge of the menstrual cycle. So the couple will use their knowledge of the menstrual cycle and will not have unprotected sex during the fertile phases of the cycle. The learner will remember fertile phase of the cycle will be about 3 days before and a day after ovulation, because that is when the egg is available and may be fertilized. So rhythm uses period. Lastly, withdrawal involves the male withdrawing the penis from the vagina before, because you may not be able to predict accurately when ovulation is likely, and therefore where exactly the fertile phase of the cycle is. Lastly, withdrawal is another unreliable method of birth control because, firstly, it depends on discipline on the part of the male, who is the one that must remove the penis, and secondly, because sperms will be released from the penis even before ejaculation. So there can be pregnancy resulting, and therefore this method is highly unreliable. Amongst the chemical methods, there is spermicides. We have here an illustration of a spermicide in the form of a gel or ointment, which can be injected into the vagina before sexual intercourse, but more commonly, which is used on condoms to further enhance their effectiveness. Next, amongst the chemical methods are the contraceptive pills, and our illustration shows here pills to take perhaps on a daily basis, day 1, day 2, etc., etc. And the contraceptive pills are hormonal methods because their effectiveness is in that they suppress ovulation, ensuring that no mature egg is released, and therefore there is no chance of conception. Contraceptive pills use hormones like injectables, which also use hormones. Again, the hormones will suppress ovulation. And another method that utilizes hormones we have here is the hormonal implant, where the implant will be placed under the skin. In this illustration, it is just placed on top, but it will be placed under the skin and will release the hormones slowly over a period of time to suppress ovulation in the system. How? By the hormone progesterone, which causes ovulation not to occur. So that is the hormonal implant. The next methods are the mechanical methods, and amongst the mechanical methods, we'll just start by looking at the intrauterine device. And the intrauterine device is a device that looks like what we have in the illustration. It is inserted in the uterus. We'll just maybe make a drawing to illustrate the uterus. And in the uterus, the device will cause, first of all, the cervix to close up and not allow sperms to pass in. So the way in which the intrauterine device will prevent conception is that it will prevent sperms from entering the uterus. Another thing that it does is that it prevents the wall of the uterus from implanting an embryo, even if there would be fertilization. So that is the intrauterine device and how it works. Also, amongst the mechanical methods, a common method is the use of the male condom. We have here an illustration of the male condom. The viewer will be aware male condom is placed over the penis, and its function is to prevent the sperms from escaping during ejaculation, and therefore the sperms cannot get into the vagina and there cannot be conception. It works in a similar way to the female condom, the only difference being that the female condom is fitted by the female in the vagina. You'll excuse my handwriting there. So it is inserted into the vagina, but its function is the same as the male condom, is in that it forms a mechanical barrier that prevents sperms from passing into the uterus. And therefore, because sperms cannot pass into the uterus, there cannot be conception. Lastly, amongst the methods of birth control, we will look at vasectomy, which is in males. And our illustration here shows vasectomy, whereby the sperm ducts are cut. I'll just put an X. Yeah, the sperm ducts are cut and tied so that during ejaculation, the sperms cannot find a way to pass into the vagina. The learner will just note here that whilst the system functions normally, the only difference is that the sperms cannot pass out. So semen will not contain any sperms with a vasectomy. Next, we look at tubal ligation, which is similar in that here the oviducts in the female are cut and tied. Cutting and tying the oviducts prevents eggs that are produced in the ovaries from being able to pass through, and therefore even the sperms, even if sperms are deposited in the vagina and move up into the uterus, they are not able to meet with the oviducts and fertilize them. Vasectomy and tubal ligation are highly reliable methods of birth control, but the main disadvantage of these two methods is that they are irreversible. Once you have the operation, you cannot want to operate and go back. Next, we look at assisted conception treatments. And amongst the assisted conception treatments, we'll look at two specific ones. We'll look at artificial insemination, and we'll look also at the use of fertility drugs. Artificial insemination and use of fertility drugs. Now, artificial insemination is useful when it is the male partner who is infertile, and it involves injecting sperms that are collected from a donor into the uterus, and those sperms obviously will then fertilize the ovum and produce the zygote, which develops into the embryo, and the woman is able to conceive. Another thing about artificial insemination are the advantages. It allows a woman to bear her own child without needing to adopt in order to have a child. It saves couples from the stigma of being barren. It also helps to prevent marriage breakdown due to the lack of childbearing. There are downsides or disadvantages in that the child cannot know the real father because the semen is taken from a donor who remains anonymous. The male partner, therefore, being not the real father, may not have genuine fatherly love for the child. And some religions are totally opposed to artificial insemination. So there is also the use of fertility drugs to help couples that are trying to bear children. And in men, fertility drugs involve the use of the hormone testosterone, and testosterone will help men by stimulating sperm production to increase the likelihood of fertilization. So it makes the semen to be sperm rich, so to speak. In women, fertility drugs will contain the hormones FSH, or follicle stimulating hormone, LH, luteinizing hormone, or progesterone. FSH will cause the ovaries to produce eggs. LH stimulates ovulation or maturation of the eggs so that they can be released. And lastly, progesterone will thicken and maintain the thickness of the uterine lining so that the chances of implantation may be increased. That does it for the first part of the lesson, and the next part of the lesson looks at sexually transmissible infections. Sexually transmissible infections, we'll just look at gonorrhea first of all. And gonorrhea, what is the organism that causes gonorrhea? Gonorrhea is caused by a bacterium. Nogwazi has a question.
Sorry to disturb you there, Mr. Dlamini. One of our viewers has a question actually on your previous part of your lesson. They are asking if there are any negative impacts on contraception, and if there are, what are? Can you tell us a little bit about them? Negative impacts on contraception.
Negative impacts on contraception. Well, thank you, Nogwazi. We can talk about those in relation to a specific method of contraception. Okay. Like, for instance, we did say natural methods maybe have the disadvantage of being unreliable. But when it comes to hormonal methods, one thing I can generalize about them is that the hormone has certain side effects.
Okay.
Yes, the hormones may have certain side effects on some people, and that is why it's often recommended before starting a particular type of contraception to get advice from your doctor, from a gynecologist.
All right. I hope the viewer got that. And the second question is, does someone who has had a tubal litigation done to them menstruate? And can you explain briefly, if they can, how, but can they menstruate if they've had tubal ligation?
Okay. When you have tubal ligation, what it does is prevents the ova from reaching the uterus. So it prevents the ova from reaching the uterus, which means that the ovaries are fully functional and will produce the eggs as normal, but the eggs will be unable to get into the uterus and will be unable to meet with sperms and therefore cannot be fertilized. So the cycle will occur normally, there will be menstruation, and there will be ovulation.
All
The
right.
only thing is that the egg cannot be fertilized.
All right. Okay, Mr. Dlamini, continue with your lesson.
Okay, thank you so much. Nogwazi. We've just finished on the fertility drugs, and we're starting on sexually transmissible infections. And we talked about gonorrhea, which we said is caused by a bacterium. And the signs and symptoms in men include a yellow discharge from the penis, include pain when urinating, include a painful scrotum. So those are some of the signs and symptoms of gonorrhea in men. In women, signs and symptoms are similar. They include a yellow discharge from the vagina, include pain or a burning sensation when urinating, but sometimes there may be no symptoms. So it's possible to have gonorrhea but not to have any symptoms of the disease. If gonorrhea is untreated, there are some effects it may have in men. It can cause blockage of the sperm ducts, which can cause one to become sterile. Another effect in men is that it can also damage the urinary organs, namely the bladder, the urethra, as the learner will be aware. In women, the effects of gonorrhea, if it goes untreated, are that the oviducts may become blocked. Again, you will be aware if the oviducts are blocked, then there cannot be any conception. Likewise, in women, gonorrhea can also cause damage to urinary organs. And if it infects a pregnant woman, it may infect the baby during birth, probably causing blindness, amongst other things. Whilst these effects are serious, gonorrhea can actually be treated quite easily using antibiotics, as it is a bacterial disease. So someone who catches gonorrhea, it's important that they treat it because it's easily treatable, and they shouldn't be maybe stopped by the stigma of having a sexually transmissible infection. Next, we look at HIV and AIDS, and we'll start here by just looking at the cause. It is a virus, human immunodeficiency virus. Human immunodeficiency virus. What does this virus do? This virus will affect lymphocytes, and the learner will remember that lymphocytes are white blood cells that help to protect the body from infection by releasing antibodies. So when the lymphocytes have been destroyed, then the immune system then becomes weakened. All right, so the immune system becomes weakened because the virus attacks lymphocytes. And when the immune system is weak, then the body becomes susceptible to secondary infections, also referred to as opportunistic infections. And these are infections from other bacteria, such as tuberculosis, such as pneumonia, fungi, as well as other viral disease. So when the person has the secondary infections or the opportunistic infections, then that person is said to have acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, or AIDS. How is it transmitted? The virus is transmitted mainly through the following methods: unprotected sexual intercourse with an infected person, from an infected mother to an unborn baby, from an infected mother to a breastfeeding baby through the breast milk, and through blood contact with an infected person, which would include the use of skin piercing objects like needles, like razors, sharing with someone who is infected, and would also include assisting someone who is bleeding without utilizing protective gear, like using gloves, for instance. So those are some of the main methods of transmission of HIV. How then can we prevent HIV from spreading? We can prevent HIV from spreading through early testing for everyone. Know your status so that you know how to protect yourself and you know how to protect others. Abstinence, abstaining from sexual intercourse. Another method is using condoms. Being faithful to one partner who is also faithful. Sterilizing or not sharing skin-piercing objects. They will also include the use of protective gear when assisting people that are bleeding and not being in direct contact with their blood. There is the use of antiretroviral drugs. Antiretroviral drugs help pregnant women not to pass on the virus to the unborn child. They also help reduce the chances of transmission of the disease or of the virus. Another measure to prevent the spread of HIV is not breastfeeding for HIV positive mothers. And lastly, we have here male circumcision, which again helps to reduce the chances of transmission of HIV. Are we okay, Nogwazi?
We're okay, Mr. Dlamini. We're okay.
Yes. Okay. So we look lastly at the answers to the questions we had earlier. The learner can just compare their answer to see if they have answers similar to mine. We have here the question on how the hormonal implant stops pregnancy. How the hormonal implant stops pregnancy. And the hormonal implant stops pregnancy by secreting a hormone which we have named here, progesterone. And what the hormone does to prevent pregnancy is to prevent ovulation. So if you had those two, then you would have 2 marks for that question. Well done to yourself. One other question we asked is how fertility drugs are used to treat infertility. How fertility drugs are used to treat infertility. The learner must include specific mention of the drugs or of the hormones, that are in the drugs and the function of the hormones. And we have here FSH for follicle development. We have LH for ovulation. And lastly, we have progesterone, which maintains the thickness of the uterus lining to increase the chances of implantation. So if you had those 3 points, then well done, learner. You had 3 marks out of 3. The last question is on the effect of HIV on the immune system. The effect of HIV on the immune system. So I have here amongst my answer, my points for the answer, that it destroys the lymphocytes. So HIV will destroy the lymphocytes, and when the lymphocytes are destroyed, it means that there will be no antibodies produced. And if there are no antibodies produced, then we can say that the immune system is weak and cannot fight infections. And when the immune system is weak, then the opportunistic infections, and we've given the example here, tuberculosis. It's very important that the learner will include an example when they talk about opportunistic infections to just further illustrate that they know what they are talking about. So we have 3 points here. We have destroying the lymphocytes, no production of antibodies, and we have tuberculosis. So again, if the learner had all 3 points, then they have 3 marks out of 3. Well done to you.
Let's clap hands for them. Okay, Mr. Dlamini, could you just please wrap up maybe a brief summary on your lesson, and then we'll be done.
Okay, thank you, Nogwazi. So to wrap up our lesson for today, we looked at methods of birth control, specifically natural methods. The learner will remember we talked about abstinence, we talked about withdrawal, and we talked about rhythm. We talked also about chemical methods. Amongst the chemical methods, we talked about spermicides, we talked about the contraceptive pill, we talked about the hormonal implant, and we talked also about injectable hormones. Then there are the mechanical methods where we talked about condoms, male condom and female condom, otherwise referred to as the femidom. And lastly, about surgical methods where we talked about vasectomy in males and we talked about tubal ligation in females. Amongst the assisted conception treatments, we talked about artificial insemination. We looked at what it is and how it can help couples. We looked at the advantages and disadvantages of artificial insemination. Then we looked at fertility drugs, what they are, what they contain, and how they assist with conception in men and also in women. And then lastly, we looked at sexually transmissible infections, specifically gonorrhea and AIDS, which is caused by the HIV virus. That is what we were looking at today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dlamini, and I hope you'll be back for another interesting biology lesson, sir.
Of course, we will continue with other topics,
Okay.
but that about completes our topic on reproduction.
All right. From Fives, I hope you found that reproduction lesson very, very interesting. But do not go anywhere from Fives. We'll be right back with Thulisile Vilagati, who is our religious education teacher. We'll be right back right after this.
Kids, wash your hands so you can come in and have lunch.
Okay, Mom. Tabo, apply some soap. You shouldn't just use water only.
But my hands aren't dirty, Nolwazi.
Just because your hands don't look dirty doesn't mean they're clean. We need to wash our hands regularly with soap and running water for at least 20 seconds, just like teacher taught us, so that all virus-causing germs and bacteria are washed away.
Tabo, listen to your sister, baby. It's important to always wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Like right now before we eat, after using the toilet, after touching animals, or after changing a nappy. We must also clean our surfaces and toilet seats with disinfectant.
Guys, it's time to wash our hands, wash our hands, wash our hands. Dirt and germs don't stain entrance, germs bye bye. First the water, then the soap, and you scrub all your palms, scrub your fingers till they clean, rinse and dry.
Guys, I'm home.
Welcome back, honey.
This is your 1 p.m. news update brought to you by Victor Silombo. In the news today, we'll speak a little bit more about COVID-19, a disease that's infectious and causing problems all over the world. COVID-19 is an infectious disease caused by the coronavirus 19. Regularly and thoroughly clean your hands with an alcohol-based hand rub or wash them with soap and water. Cover your mouth and nose with your flexed elbow or use a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Then dispose of that used tissue immediately in a dustbin. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Maintain a social distance of at least 1 meter between yourself and everyone else. Drink copious amounts of water to make sure your body is hydrated. And remember, if you develop a fever, a cough, or have difficulty breathing, call 977. Stay safe, stay home.
Kids, I hope you are listening carefully. It's very important that we take these precautions very seriously, so we all avoid catching or spreading COVID-19. So, we must stay home for our safety. Okay?
Yes, Dad.
Hands come in all shapes and sizes. Indeed, one of God's greatest inventions. It is amazing what you can do with those hands. But watch those hands. They can kill you. Wash your hands regularly with water and soap. With our hands, we will beat coronavirus. My cleanliness is my life.
The basic protective measures against the new coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently and thoroughly with soap and water, or use alcohol-based hand rub. Maintain social distancing. Maintain at least 1 meter distance between yourself and anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Avoid touching eyes, nose, and mouth. Hands touch many surfaces and can pick viruses. Once contaminated, hands can transfer the virus to your eyes, nose, or mouth. From there, the virus can enter your body and make you sick. Practice respiratory hygiene. Make sure you and the people around you follow good respiratory hygiene. This means covering your mouth and nose with your bent elbow or tissue when you cough or sneeze. Dispose the used tissue immediately. If you have fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, seek medical help early. Stay home if you feel unwell. Follow the directions of your local health authority. Stay informed and follow advice given by your healthcare provider.
COVID-19 is an infectious disease caused by a new coronavirus introduced to humans for the first time. It is spread from person to person, mainly through the droplets produced when an infected person speaks, coughs, or sneezes. These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of people who are nearby. These droplets are too heavy to travel far in the air. They only travel approximately 1 meter and quickly settle on surfaces. This is the reason person-to-person spread is happening mainly between close contacts. The exact time that the virus can survive on surfaces is not yet known. So it is wise to clean surfaces regularly, particularly in the vicinity of people infected with COVID-19. Hands touch many surfaces, which can be contaminated with the virus. You should therefore avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouth, since contaminated hands can transfer the virus from the surface to yourself. When coughing or sneezing, cover your mouth and nose with the bend of your elbow or use a disposable tissue. If a tissue is used, discard it immediately into a closed bin. The most effective way to prevent the spread of the new coronavirus is to clean your hands frequently with an alcohol-based hand rub or soap and water. This will eliminate the virus if it is on your hands. Stay healthy and prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Welcome back, viewers. You are still tuned in to Home Study on Eswatini TV. I am Nogwazi Dlamini, and I'm not alone again in the studio. I am with Nompumelelo Hadebe and Zanele Mota, who will be our sign language interpreters. Also joining me is the Form 5 religious education teacher, Tulisile Vilagati, aka TV. Tulisile, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing well, Nogwazi. How are you?
I'm good. Do you remember me?
I still remember you, Nogwazi.
Where do you remember me from?
I know you back, we're running a program, Brains on the Go,
Yes.
where my student actually won.
Yes, your student won.
Yes, and I'm proud of that.
Welcome back, I must just say.
Thank you for
All right.
receiving me.
Okay, can you tell us what today's topic is and what do you expect the learner to have learned by the end of the lesson?
Thank you very much, Nogwazi. A very good afternoon, my dear learners at home. Today's lesson is on the post-resurrection ministry of Jesus Christ, and we have two subtopics in that topic. The first topic being the post-resurrection appearance to his disciples, and then the next topic being the Ascension. And then this is what you'll need, my dear learner, for today's lesson. Those are the learning resources. You will need your RSV Bible. You will need your notebook. You will need your religious education, a textbook that is religious education for senior secondary, and our focus will be on pages 122 and page 123. And then you'll need your notebook and your pen.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Tulisile, for that. I hope the Form 5s they heard actually what they will need on their lesson. And just a reminder, Form 5s, we are live on YouTube and on Facebook. And if you have any questions, please feel free to use our WhatsApp number. Text us, please, any questions that you might have, and we will forward them to TV. TV, you can carry on with your lesson.
Okay, thank you, Nogwazi. I hope you will recall, my dear Lena, that last week we were introducing the book of Acts to you, where actually our focus was on the introduction, the historical part. So now we are more focusing on the content of the book, hence the topic of the day. Here are the lesson objectives, my dear Lena. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to relate the post-resurrection appearance of Jesus to his disciples. That is giving the story.
Can I disturb you right there, Tulsile? Can you please go a bit slower so that our viewers back home do not get lost onto what you are saying?
Okay, thank you, Nogwazi.
Yes.
So my learner will be able to relate the post-resurrection appearance of Jesus, that is actually giving the story. My learners will also be able to explain the significance of the post-resurrection appearance of Jesus. They will also be able to analyze the character of Jesus and the apostles in the story of the post-resurrection appearance. They will also be able to explain the importance of the ascension of Jesus to both his disciples and to us as Christians. And lastly, they will be able to draw lessons from the ascension of Jesus. Then, my dear Lena, why is it important for us to look at the post-resurrection appearances? Remember, in the previous lessons, we are talking about Luke and Acts as a continuous story. So now we're going to start with the post-resurrection appearances recorded in the Gospel of Luke, in order for us to make sense of the post-resurrection appearances in the book of Acts. It's very important to distinguish between the two. There are post-resurrection appearances in Acts, there are post-resurrection appearances in Luke. Hence, we begin with those in Luke. The first one being his appearance. The first one being his appearance to Cleopas and another disciple on the way to Emmaus. And the story is found in Luke chapter 24, verse 13 to 32. I hope you are going to read that account, my dear Lena. He also appeared to Peter in Jerusalem. That is Luke chapter 24, verse 34. He also made an appearance to his disciples for the second time from Emmaus in a locked room in Jerusalem. One thing that I want you to take note of, my dear Lena, is that the post-resurrection appearances here, it reveals something about the nature of Jesus' resurrected body. It's now different from the body that he was in before he actually resurrected. So take note of that. So now we're making the transition. Now on the book of Luke, in the book of Acts, the author begins the story by introducing us to Jesus' post-resurrection ministry, hence the account. Okay, then the account of the post-resurrection appearance of Jesus in the book of Acts. Make sure that you distinguish, as I already mentioned, my dear Lena. The account in Acts is different from the account in Luke. So it's very important at this point to remember that whenever we are giving an account, it's very important for us to give the story in a very coherent and harmonious way to show that we know the story. Hence, we have the account in Acts chapter 1, verse 1 to 8. I've highlighted key points that you will actually focus on as you give the account. So, the first important point in the account is Jesus' appearance to his disciples. We are saying here, Jesus appeared to his disciples for 40 days, ministering to them. And then he gave them a command. What was the command, my dear Lena? He told them not to depart from Jerusalem, but to wait for the promise of the Father, which was actually the promise of the Holy Spirit. And then also important in the account is when Jesus reminds them of John's baptism and actually promises them the Holy Spirit. Remember, my dear Lena, the apostles were Jews. As fellow Jews, they were familiar with John's baptism. So now Jesus is introducing a new baptism to them, the baptism of the Holy Spirit. And then we move to the apostles' question of the kingdom to Israel. This is found in verse 6. This is where the apostles asked Jesus, Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel? Take note of that question, my dear Lena, because we are going to use that example actually when we analyze the personality of the disciples later in our discussion. Also of note is Jesus' response to their question. After they had asked Jesus, Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel? How does Jesus respond to their question? He tells them, it is not for you to know the times or seasons that the Father has set in his own authority. Also take note of that, my dear Lena, because we are going to use that when we actually analyze Jesus' personality. And then lastly, in verse 8, he gives them the Great Commission. What is the Great Commission? It is very important for you, my dear Lena, to take note of this, because this is one of the most important concepts that one who studies the book of Acts should actually familiarize himself or herself with. So then, moving to the Great Commission. It's found in Acts chapter 1 verse 8. The Great Commission. It reads thus, but you shall receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you. Of note here, my dear Lena, is that at this point in time, the apostles haven't yet received power because the Holy Spirit haven't come upon them yet. So now Jesus promises them that they shall receive power. I think one thing to note again here is the role of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit enables one to have power to perform different duties. So once the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you shall, that's a promise, you shall be my witnesses. Let's take note of the word witnesses, my dear Lena. What is a witness? Remember, the apostles had been with Jesus throughout his ministry. They've witnessed him performing miracles, preaching the gospel. They've witnessed his suffering. They've witnessed his death and resurrection. Hence, they are witnesses. It is for that reason that most of the time in the book of Acts, you are going to see or find the apostles referring to the word witnesses more often. It is something that was actually pronounced by Jesus. So then they shall begin where? In Jerusalem. In Jerusalem. That is the starting point. I hope you are noting that, my dear Lena. So when ministering, they are going to begin in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria. Let's take note of these province, Samaria. If you can recall very well, last year, we did discuss when introducing the book of Luke that Jews and Samaritans were avowed enemies. They were antagonists. So now Jesus is giving his apostles a command to go to Samaria. You will ask yourself, my dear Lena, how are they supposed to preach in this province where they have enemies? This goes to show that Jesus indeed had not come for political agendas, but he had come as a spiritual Messiah. That takes us back to the apologetic purposes of the writing of the book of Acts. And then lastly, to the end of the earth. Take note of that again. The end of the earth refers to all parts of the world. The instruction is clear here, my dear Lena. The apostles were to make the world their mission field. So hence the entire book of Acts is structured, it's planned around this outward reaching scheme. They are to take the gospel to the world. And then, my dear Lena, one may ask himself, why is it important? Why was it important for Jesus to make the post-resurrection appearance? Remember, we've confirmed that in the book of Luke, he did appear. He presented himself alive to his apostles. Then why was it important for him now in Acts to minister to them after his resurrection? Firstly, the post-resurrection appearance was evidence of Jesus' resurrection. As the saying goes, seeing is believing. So it was going to be extremely difficult for them, my dear Lena, to believe that Jesus had indeed resurrected if he didn't present himself alive to them. Hence they believed when they saw him. Secondly, the post-resurrection appearance of Jesus was proof of Jesus' identity as the Messiah. Let's take note of the word identity. Who is Jesus? He's the Messiah. Going back to our account where Jesus responds to the apostles' question about restoring the kingdom to Israel, Jesus doesn't entertain them. I hope you have noted that. He doesn't respond to their question, but instead he tells them that it's not for them to know the times or seasons. This was proof that Jesus was indeed the Messiah, which then again takes us back to the apologetic purposes of the author Luke in writing Acts of the Apostles. Jesus was indeed the Messiah. Why do we say Jesus was indeed the Messiah, my dear Lena? Because Jesus was not concerned about politics, but he was a spiritual Messiah. And then the post-resurrection appearance of Jesus also demonstrates Jesus' absolute trust in his disciples to become evangelists. Absolute trust. Remember in the account, my dear Lena, we said that Jesus, in the Great Commission, Jesus told them actually that they shall be witnesses. And if you may ask yourself, what kind of a person usually is a witness? Usually, you'll concur with me, my dear Lena, when we are to solemnize important events and stages in our life, we need witnesses. We are signing scholarships, marriage, we need witnesses. Usually when you pick a witness, you'll choose someone you know, someone who knows you, someone you trust. So then Jesus choosing them as his witnesses was actually a clear demonstration that he trusted them to actually spread the gospel to all parts of the world. Then, my dear Lena, we move to characterization. But before we actually analyze the characters in this story, I would like just to pinpoint this important thing. There's been a paradigm shift in our curriculum, my dear Lena. Gone are the days where you will just read the biblical text and regurgitate. Then you will say you are an A-star student. At this point in time, we are saying, move from the knowledge. After reading the biblical text, you must be able to interpret the text. You must be able to analyze. You must be able to evaluate and then find relevance to our society today. Hence, you will find topics like a characterization, like lessons drawn from each story and all that. So it's very important, my dear Lena, to move from knowledge and be able to analyze. Hence, now we'll be analyzing the character of Jesus from the story. So from the story of the post-resurrection appearance of Jesus, we learn that Jesus is very firm or assertive. Going back to verse 7, we can tell that Jesus is very firm. What do we mean when we say Jesus is very firm? He's a man of his word. When the disciples asked him, it was some kind of a political question. He doesn't entertain them. Instead, he brings them to order. It is not for you to know the times or days that the Father has set. He could have given them a response that is actually in line with what they were asking. But Jesus is very firm. Actually, he's trying to show them that you are the last people to be asking me this question, because you have been with me all this time. You know I'm not concerned about politics. So he's very firm. We also see that Jesus is authoritative. Jesus is authoritative. Jesus exhumes authority. Remember, he shares equal status in the Trinity as God the Son. So he has authority. Firstly, we can look in verse 4 where he charges them not to leave Jerusalem. From that verse, we can see that Jesus has authority because he charges them and they never question that, to show that indeed he has authority. And then moving to verse 8, my dear Lena, actually where there is the Great Commission, we also see that Jesus is authoritative there because he tells them that they shall. It's something that actually he was confirming. Black or white, it was going to happen. It shows that he has authority. He can make everything possible through his word, just speaking. And then lastly, we see that Jesus is orderly. Jesus is orderly. Look at the Great Commission, my dear Lena. He gives them some kind of a sequence, some geographical guideline to say this is where we are going to begin. So they were not to preach haphazardly. There was order in their preaching. Hence, they were going to begin from Jerusalem, move to the whole of Judea and Samaria, and to the end of the earth, which also includes our own continent, Africa. Hence, we're able to receive the gospel. So there is order in everything that Jesus does. And it's a lesson that actually we're going to look at later. Then, let's move to the apostles. What can we say about the apostles, my dear Lena? What is revealed about their character? They are revealed as people who are God-fearing. God-fearing. We can also describe them as obedient and submissive. And I've given you an example, my dear Lena, in verse 4. We see them being God-fearing because when Jesus gives them the command, do not depart from Jerusalem, but wait for the promise of the Father. They didn't question that. They submitted. They obeyed Jesus. So we can say they are obedient. They are also portrayed as people who are patient. Looking at the Great Commission, Jesus charged them not to leave Jerusalem, and then he promised them that the gift of the Holy Spirit shall come. Jesus didn't give them any times or dates. He just said they should wait for the promise, and their patience really paid, my dear Lena, because after that they received, during the outpouring of this Holy Spirit, you will see in subsequent chapters, we will see that their patience really paid because they eventually received the Holy Spirit. We also see that the disciples are portrayed as naive. I think you can note, my dear Lena, that they are negatively portrayed as naive people. They have a sense of misunderstanding of who Jesus was. Going back to verse 6, where they asked Jesus this question, Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel? How naive they are. We are shocked actually as readers because we are expecting the disciples are in the inner circle. We are expecting them to understand Jesus more than we do. It's shocking for us. So they have this spiritual blindness. They don't understand who Jesus is. At the back of their mind, they are having a political figure, someone who is going to liberate them from Roman colonial rule. Yet they knew that Jesus was by no means interested in politics. Then we come to the lessons, my dear Lena. Remember, I've said, after reading any biblical text, it's very important to be able to draw lessons. What have I learned from the story? We are not reading for entertainment, but we want to draw lessons that we are going to actually apply in everyday life. Firstly, this story, my dear Lena, it teaches us to exercise patience as Christians. Exercise patience as Christians. It's very important for us to be patient. You know, they say patience is a virtue. There are things in life that we want so badly that we wish we could just have them instantly. But here we are being taught that it's very important for us to be patient. It is not for us to know times or seasons, so we should wait on the Lord. We've seen this through the apostles. They were not told when they shall receive the gift of the Holy Spirit, but they waited patiently. Hence, we learn that as Christians, we should be patient. I hope, my dear Lena at home, you are patient. Things come in the right time. Secondly, we learn that we should obey God's command. That is very important. Obey God's command. Remember, the Bible also teaches us to obey our parents, which I think we are doing actually these days. But before we can obey God's command, before we can obey our parents' instruction, it's very important for us to obey God's command. How do we obey God's command? You know, God speaks to us in different ways, my dear Lena. So it's very important. When we read the Bible, God talks to us. When we go to church, God speaks to us in different ways. It's very important to obey his command. Just like the apostles who didn't question Jesus. They didn't doubt, but they obeyed. Then lastly, my dear Lena, we learn that we should be orderly. I like that. We should be orderly. There is nothing displeasing like a young person who is disorderly. That's a lesson. Be orderly in everything that you do. Jesus has taught us. He's a trendsetter here. He has taught us to be orderly in everything that we do. Look at the commission he gives to his disciples. He actually gives them some kind of a sequence. This is how we are going to conduct actually your mission. So that's a lesson for us, my dear learners, today. We should be orderly. I'm sure you planned for this day. From morning, you knew that by this time you'll be in front of your television set or your gadget watching this lesson. It shows that you are orderly. I'm sure right now you are planning that next year you'll be going to tertiary. After tertiary, you'll be going to work. After work, you know, everything must be in order. It's a lesson to us all. Okay, my dear Lena, then we are moving to the second part of the lesson. As I said, we have two subtopics. The second one is the Ascension. Actually, it's a continuation of the story. Yes, Nowazi, do you have something to say?
Tulsile, can we please take a little bit of a break and maybe you can have a bit of water? Viewers will be back right after this.
Imagine your favorite personality or celebrity. Now imagine if they had to do a job that you never saw them doing. You don't have to imagine. We'll show you.
Really? Asambege is back. This is the show that takes your favorite celebrity and personality and gives them the challenge of doing a job that some people do every day.
Yeah.
Can they do it? Will they crumble under the pressure? Find out in the brand new season of Asambege.
Fame, unfiltered. A talk show that will reveal the emotional hustle behind the fame.
I was bullied to the core that I felt worthless.
We read about them.
Yes, chef.
We see them on stage.
Oh, holy night, the stars are brightly shining.
We watch them on TV. But depression does not discriminate. Help for all. Fame, unfiltered.
Welcome back to our viewers, and if you've just joined us, you are on the second part of the Form 5's religious education lesson, and they're doing Paul's resurrection ministry. I'm right?
Yes, Nogwazi.
All right, Tulsile, I'll let you continue with your lesson.
Thank you, Nogwazi. before the break, my dear Lena, we were introducing the second subtopic, which is the Ascension. And the story is found in the book of Acts, chapter 1, verse 9 to 11. As I've already mentioned, it's a continuation of the post-resurrection appearance. So before we can get to the account, dear Lena, it's very important that I actually take you through the background of the Ascension. So the story is found in Zechariah 14, verse 4. That's the background. So the idea of the Ascension was not new to the apostles. Remember, they were Jews. So it was prophesied, and Jews had a firm belief in prophecies. So they were awaiting the Ascension. The verse reads thus: on that day, his feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives. Take note of that, Mount of Olives, which lies before Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives shall be split in two from east to west by a very wide valley. Summarily, my Elena, what this verse actually insinuates is that the ascension of Jesus was actually prophesied by the prophets. And here what we see the setting. It was prophesied that Jesus will ascend in Mount of Olives, also known as Mount Olivet. So why Mount of Olives, out of all places? This mountain had a religious significance to the Jews. It had a religious significance to Jewish apocalyptic literature. Remember, in the Gospel, according to Luke, my dear Lena, we saw Jesus, as was the custom, praying in the Mount of Olives. And at the foot of this mountain was the Garden of Gethsemane, which goes to show that it was very important. Hence, the Messiah had to resurrect in this mountain. And then let's look at the story itself, the Ascension. The story is found in Acts chapter 1, verse 9 to 11. Remember, in the first account, I emphasized on the significance of actually telling the story, giving the account in a very coherent and chronological manner to show that you know the story. So this is what the story entails, my dear Lena. Jesus was lifted up. So it is key. Remember, we're talking about the Ascension. So we have to see him ascending. He was lifted up. A cloud took him. I think you'll recall, my dear Lena, that clouds were symbolic of God's presence. So it took him out of their sight. They couldn't see him anymore. And then another important point in our account is that the disciples gazed into heaven. Take note of the verb gazed. It was not just an ordinary look, but they gazed. They looked intently. They looked steadily into heaven because they hadn't witnessed such before. So this goes with certain emotions and attitudes. Then there were two men. Let's take note of two men with white robes. In white robes stood beside them. Those were angels to deliver a certain message. And what did these two men say? They said, "Men of Galilee." They were addressing the disciples. Why do you stand looking into heaven? Why do you stand looking into heaven? Remember, they were gazing into heaven. This Jesus who was taken up, he had ascended, remember, from you into heaven will come in the same way as you saw him go into heaven, will come in the same way. This is the idea of the second coming of Jesus Christ, my dear Lena. We'll see when we actually discuss the significance of the Ascension. So the idea of the second coming emanates from the fact that the angels left a message. The same manner in which he ascended to heaven, he will return one day. So then, my dear Lena, let us try to visualize our account here. Remember, at this point in time, it's very important to familiarize yourself with the source. For purposes of assessment, we have what we call a source-based question. This is not a picture, my dear Lena. We call it a source in religious education. So the source, what is the source? The source actually is a visual illustration of the story. You can tell, look at how colorful and fascinating it is. It's telling the whole story. There is Jesus, as we have said, being lifted up. Clouds are covering him, as we have said. symbolizing the presence of God. They are the disciples, my dear Lena. They are gazing, as you can see. Just look at the facial expressions, the gestures. They are gazing. And then there are the two men in white robes, the angels, to deliver the message. Men of Galilee, why do you stand gazing? So that's the whole story there, my dear Lena. And then we move to the significance. Why was it important for the apostles to witness the ascension of Jesus? And why was it important actually? How is the ascension important to Christians today? Firstly, the ascension was a formal farewell between Jesus and the apostles. A formal farewell. What is a formal farewell, my dear Elena? Remember, Jesus was now returning to heaven. He was done with his ministry on earth. So it's very polite, you know, when you especially when you have spent so much time with people, that when you leave them, you bid them farewell. You don't just disappear mysteriously. Jesus could have disappeared mysteriously. Remember, he's omnipotent. He's God himself. But he decided to make it formal. He wanted them to create memories of him ascending to heaven. Also, it was the end. It marked the end of Jesus' earthly ministry. Why the end of Jesus' earthly ministry, my dear Lena? Remember, Jesus was now done. The prophecies were fulfilled. So now he was returning to his Father in heaven, where he was going to assume a new role as the high priest. I hope you'll take note of that, my dear Lena. He was ending his ministry and assuming a new role as a high priest. That is why, actually, prophecies mention that he's seated at the right hand of God. That is why nowadays Christians pray in the name of Jesus. It's because they believe that Jesus intercedes on their behalf. So hence, it was necessary for him to ascend to heaven. Also, the ascension serves as a right platform for the apostles to receive the Great Commission. Remember, my dear Lena, we've already discussed the Great Commission and its importance, my dear Lena. So it gave the Jesus a right platform. Remember, this is where Jesus actually left them with the message that they should go and preach the gospel to the whole world. So this was the right platform. There couldn't be any right place for him to leave them with this message. Also, the ascension, my dear Lena, is important because it reminds Christians of Jesus' second coming. Remember the message of the angels. This Jesus you see going up will come back the same way. So the idea of the second coming is drawn from the ascension. You know, the reason why Christians nowadays are living a holy life, the reasons why Christians today are worshiping God is because they are awaiting his second coming. You know, I hope let me just take a practical example, my dear Lena. With the scourge of the corona pandemic, the world is set abuzz, with some people even reckoning that it's the end times. And it is indeed the end times, my dear Lena, let me say that. So what is happening now? Most people are repenting with the belief that Jesus, remember, he told us that we don't know the dates and seasons. So it's very important for Christians to be always ready. Also, the ascension, my dear Lena, serves as evidence that Jesus was indeed the long-awaited Messiah. Remember in that prophecy that we took from the book of Zechariah, that it was prophesied that the Messiah will ascend in the Mount of Olives. So by him ascended, that prophecy was fulfilled. And that lastly, the ascension was important because it serves as assurance that the Holy Spirit shall come upon them. Remember, he promised that they promised them that they shall receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon them. So then it serves as an assurance that it will indeed. It was very important for Jesus to ascend so that the Holy Spirit could descend.
Thank you very much to Lisile for that. I have just one question from a 5 viewer. They are asking, why was the ascension significant for the disciples?
as I've already said, thank you, my dear Lena, for that question. As I've already said, what I have here is actually an amalgam of both the significance to the disciples and to us today. Let's take, for instance, the first point. It was a formal farewell. So that is relevant to the disciples. They had to see him, my dear Lena, ascending to heaven. So it serves actually as some kind of bidding farewell, that I'm now living and I'm now going to heaven where my Father is. And that was assurance that the Holy Spirit shall come down. So what is important is for you to read all these points and then be able to pick those that apply to the disciples and those that apply to us today.
Thank you very much, Thulisile, for that. And I hope the Form 5s learned something from that religious education lesson. Thulisile, we're hoping to see you again sometime soon.
Definitely, I'll be back, Nogwazi.
Okay, I hope you have a good afternoon.
Thank
Me
you.
and Lerato will be right back after this.
COVID-19 is an infectious disease caused by a new coronavirus introduced to humans for the first time. It is spread from person to person, mainly through the droplets produced when an infected person speaks, coughs, or sneezes. These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of people who are nearby. These droplets are too heavy to travel far in the air. They only travel approximately 1 meter and quickly settle on surfaces. This is the reason person-to-person spread is happening mainly between close contacts. The exact time that the virus can survive on surfaces is not yet known. So it is wise to clean surfaces regularly, particularly in the vicinity of people infected with COVID-19. Hands touch many surfaces, which can be contaminated with the virus. You should therefore avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouth, since contaminated hands can transfer the virus from the surface to yourself. When coughing or sneezing, cover your mouth and nose with the bend of your elbow or use a disposable tissue. If a tissue is used, discard it immediately into a closed bin. The most effective way to prevent the spread of the new coronavirus is to clean your hands frequently with an alcohol-based hand rub or soap and water. This will eliminate the virus if it is on your hands. Stay healthy and prevent the spread of COVID-19.
The basic protective measures against the new coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently and thoroughly with soap and water or use alcohol-based hand rub. Maintain social distancing. Maintain at least 1 meter distance between yourself and anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Avoid touching eyes, nose, and mouth. Hands touch many surfaces and can pick viruses. Once contaminated, hands can transfer the virus to your eyes, nose, or mouth. From there, the virus can enter your body and make you sick. Practice respiratory hygiene. Make sure you and the people around you follow good respiratory hygiene. Welcome back, viewers. As you can see, we are actually social distancing. We are observing it. That is a very, very important fact there. Lerato, how was your afternoon today?
Well, my afternoon was great today, and I got to learn add maths with Mr. Kama.
All right.
Yeah.
That was interesting for you.
It was.
For me, I may say, I think biology was interesting for me.
Okay.
It was. I'm not afraid to say that. It was an interesting lesson for me.
Okay.
Yes, Lerato. Can you please tell us about our social media platforms?
Well, we are live on YouTube and on Facebook from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. And we're also live on your screens at the exact same time.
Yes.
Nogwazi, please tell us about today's timetable.
Yes, so tomorrow's timetable actually looks a little bit like this. It's okay, they'll forgive you. So first off, we have Eswatini for grade 7 from 2 p.m. until 2:30 p.m. Then we have Eswatini for Form 3 from 2:30 p.m. until 3:08 p.m. Then we have Science for Form 3 from 3:08 p.m. until 3:45 p.m. Then we have Physics for Form 5 from 3:45 p.m. until 4:25 p.m. Then we have Chemistry for Form 5, which is from 4:25 p.m. until 5 o'clock.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope the viewers at home are satisfied with their lessons for today, and we're hoping to see you guys tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll see you guys tomorrow. And just a reminder, we do have a WhatsApp line that you guys can use to text any questions that you might have. Remember to observe social distancing, like me and Lerato right now. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. Stay safe. Stay at home. Bye.